to be like this.
A bad thing happened and we've got to live with it.
Mommy.
If it's any consolation, I see her too.
A man named Stephen Lewis comes out of the police station in a distraught state. Officers ask him to sit in the car, but Stephen barely responds to their words. The police bring him home and give him 15 minutes. His wife, Julie, has gone into hysterics upon learning that their daughter has gone missing. Some time passes. Despite the tragedy, Stephen tries to move on. However, he can't bear to see happy families on the street. Stephen Lewis is a successful writer of children's books, but he is currently experiencing a creative crisis. Stephen meets with his friends, Charles and Thelma, at a restaurant. Charles advises him not to wait for inspiration but simply sit down and start writing. Millions of children are waiting for a new masterpiece from their favorite author. Stephen didn't expect to hear that Charles intends to quit his job in the government. The couple plans to move out of town because they are tired of the hustle and bustle. Charles left to answer a phone call, and Thelma told Stephen that he should meet with Julie. They can't avoid each other forever. Walking home, Stephen remembers how he used to lead his daughter Kate by the hand. For Stephen, his family was the most important thing in life. On that fateful day, as he was paying for purchases at the checkout counter, Kate, who was looking at children's books, had disappeared. At first, Stephen thought she had simply gotten lost in the supermarket, but the daughter was nowhere to be found. Stephen began panicking, asking people if anyone had seen a girl in the yellow jacket. When he got home, he told his wife what had happened. Julie had a hysterical fit, but Stephen promised that they would find Kate. In the present, determined, Stephen called Julie. The next day, he went to a committee meeting where they discussed child-rearing issues, but he couldn't concentrate on anything. Stephen sinks deeper into depression. That morning, Julie called him back and asked him to come over today and bring her sheet music album. Seeing a leaflet on Kate's disappearance, Stephen remembers how the wife blamed him for losing their daughter. Charles still hasn't told the Prime Minister about his intention to resign. As Stephen rode the train, he remembered the happy days that were now in the past. Then he began to remember how he came home without finding Kate. Julie thinks they will never find her. In addition, she does not like the fact that her husband drinks all the time. Currently, Stephen sees Kate everywhere, running away from him. He still can't come to terms with her disappearance and feels guilty. At some point, Stephen peeked into an old pub, and it seemed to him that he saw his mother in her youth. They smiled at each other. Now Julie lives in the village. Stephen visited her after a long time. Surprisingly, Julie was glad to see him. The woman said she likes living here. It has been almost a year since Julie moved here. Stephen noticed that she looked prettier. The same could not be said of him. Stephen lost weight and felt terrible. The couple reminisced about the past and kissed, then indulged in passion. Stephen has hope that things can still get better. When Julie fell asleep, she dreamed of Kate. This happened often. Later, Julie told her husband that she earns a living by playing music. It doesn't bring her much money, but Julie likes doing what she loves. Stephen admitted that he saw Kate today. Or he just wanted to believe it. Stephen understands that there is no hope, but he cannot stop looking for her. Even their private detective refused to continue the investigation, believing that there is no chance. Julie said that she also sees her, but tries to live on despite everything. Stephen hopes that from this day on, he and his wife can be together again. However, Julie is not yet ready for this. Stephen left, but almost immediately called his wife, asking if there is a chance that everything will be okay between them. Julie replied that this tragedy has completely changed their lives. Nothing will ever be the same as before. Stephen cannot stop reminiscing about the past. His life used to be perfect. He had no idea that one day it would all be ruined. Stephen tries to get involved in the work. Later, Rachel Murray invited him for a cup of coffee, asking about his new book. Stephen told her that he writes about a boy who wants to become a fish and learns to hold his breath underwater. The conversation was interrupted by Joanna Buckley, who reported that the Prime Minister wants to see Stephen. The Prime Minister asked the man to spy on Charles, who had decided to suddenly leave his post. Stephen was very confused, realizing that the Prime Minister does not accept refusal. Meanwhile, Charles is enjoying his new life. Now, as he had dreamed, the man lives with his wife in seclusion. Stephen visited the parents, telling his father about the conversation with the Prime Minister. Stephen wants to meet his friend, but he is not going to spy on him. Julie returned to the house where she used to live with her husband. She missed her old life. Entering the daughter's room, Julie could barely hold back tears. Soon after Kate's disappearance, the couple wanted to sell this house, but never did. Stephen told his parents that he had recently met with Julie. The village where she now lives seemed very familiar to him, especially the pub called The Bell. It turned out that Stephen's parents had been there a long time ago, even before their wedding. Stephen cannot stop thinking about Kate and Julie, while Charles continues to enjoy nature. The Prime Minister is very unhappy with his absence. The spouses met again, this time at Julie's initiative. She suggested that her husband learn to play the piano. Stephen liked the idea, as it was a chance to get closer to the wife again. Stephen began his first lesson. Julie was his personal teacher. At home, Stephen continues to learn to play the piano. Once he sent Julie a recording of his playing. Listening to it, she couldn't help but smile. Soon Stephen visited his friends. Thelma was very happy to see him and said that Charles would be back soon. Stephen told about his piano lessons with Julie. Now he is doing everything to impress the wife. Thelma admitted that the Prime Minister is spying on them and not letting them live in peace. This greatly worries them. Stephen went into the woods to look for his friend. Apparently, Charles is happy here. The friends hugged. At this time, the Prime Minister expresses concern about Charles endangering their project. Charles showed Stephen his shelter in the woods. Stephen immediately suspected that something was wrong. His friend behaves strangely. Besides, he looks bad. Charles said that everything in his head is tangled up. He is here because he is looking for a child. This statement angered Stephen. While he was faced with a real tragedy, his friend was doing some nonsense and pretending to be a martyr. Charles ran away and started climbing a tree. Stephen tried to stop him, but the friend didn't want to listen. Stephen returned to Thelma, who said she was tired of putting up with it. But she is ready to completely change her life for the husband. However, Stephen is not willing to accept this. Charles is a promising adult man who doesn't belong in such a wilderness. For the first time in many weeks, Charles shaved. Stephen realizes he was too harsh with his friend and apologized to him. Charles assured him that everything was okay. He also hopes that the friend will someday find his daughter. Stephen feels that something is bothering Charles, but he was still planning to go home, unaware that Charles was watching him from the woods. When the car left, he ran away. Thelma saw this from the window. It seems to Stephen that among the schoolchildren he saw Kate growing up. He told the cab driver to stop the car and ran into the school. Stephen entered the classroom in the middle of the lesson and asked the teacher for a private conversation. He explained that the girl's real name is not Ruth, but Kate, and that she was his daughter who had gone missing 3 years earlier. The teacher took Stephen to the principal, who said that Ruth came from a well-off family that she had known for a long time. But Stephen continues to insist that the girl is Kate. Due to his emotions, the man was barely holding back tears. Ruth was brought to the principal's office to make sure. Ruth denied knowing Stephen. In addition, school documents and photographs confirmed that Ruth had no connection to the Lewis family. Stephen does not understand what is happening. Perhaps he is just going crazy with grief. Stephen couldn't stand it and burst into tears, remembering Kate. Julie thought she saw a boy through the window, but it turned out to be a taxi driver. The spouses met again. Stephen told his wife about what had happened at school. Despite everything, he does not want to give up and believes that Kate will someday find them herself. Julie understands that they are powerless to do anything. All they can do is wait. Later, Julie admitted to her husband that she had decided to leave for a few months. She needed this to find the strength to go on. Stephen visited his parents again. The mother told him that she had recently visited that village and found the Bell pub. Many years ago, Stephen's parents had been there. That day, the mother confessed to his father that she was pregnant. It was unplanned, as they were not yet married at the time. When the mother looked out the window, she saw her son smiling at her for the first time. The woman swore to Stephen that she was not crazy. It was all real. Stephen said he believed her. If his mother saw her son before he was born, perhaps Kate is somewhere nearby. They just have to continue loving her and waiting. Stephen met Rachel Murray. They attended a live music concert together. Rachel told that she worked as a teacher and enjoyed what she did. Stephen said he was not sure if he could finish his book about a boy who wanted to become a fish. Rachel was late for her train, so after thanking Stephen for a pleasant day, she left. Stephen was practicing holding breath for a long time, just like the hero in his book. Inspiration returned to him. Stephen was determined to finish the book, unable to stop thinking about Kate. In the evening, Rachel, who tripped and fell, unexpectedly came to his place. Stephen treated her wound. It turned out that Rachel came here for a reason. She showed Stephen the government-approved child-rearing guide, which their committee had been fighting against. Rachel was about to use the restroom, but inadvertently walked into the children's room, where the Christmas tree was decorated. Stephen said he was not going crazy, something was just out of control. Rachel realizes that Stephen is going through a difficult time in his life. He offered Rachel tea, saying he guessed who wrote the absurd manual. It was his best friend Charles. At night, Thelma went looking for her husband, who had not returned from the forest. When he did not return in the morning, Stephen joined the search. Charles's shoe was lying on the ground. It turned out that Charles voluntarily left his life. Stephen could not believe it. He burst into tears, realizing that he had lost another person dear to him. Soon the funeral took place. Stephen gave a speech, saying his friend was too good to live in this world. There was no cynicism in him, like in a child. The Prime Minister also attended the funeral. Stephen ended the speech with tears in his eyes. He would always remember and love his friend. At home, Stephen unpacked one of his Christmas presents. It was a baby walkie-talkie. Stephen addressed Kate, believing she could hear him. He said they loved her very much and were waiting for her. The next morning, Stephen woke up to the sound of Kate's voice from the radio. At that moment the phone rang. It was Julie, who had returned from her trip. She expressed her condolences about what happened to Charles. When Stephen found out that his wife was in the hospital, he rushed there immediately. It turned out that Julie was pregnant but had not told her husband for 9 months. Julie knows for sure that she will give birth to a son. She had already seen him through the window a few months before.